I recently replayed Far Cry 4 and it got me in a very Far Cry mood, so I thought today we would kind of tackle the task of what would an ideal Far Cry 7 be like to me. So let's get straight into it. As a heads up though, this is just what I would want to see, not what I think the correct Far Cry 7 should be. So if you disagree, don't get mad, but do drop down below why you think I'm wrong. I'm actually completely open to all your takes, so let's get into it. First things first, one thing I would really like to return is the separation of the open world and the main campaign. Don't get me wrong, the way Far Cry 5 does its story is really cool. The fact that you slowly, physically dismantle the open world and that progresses you through the story is really neat. But it led to the issue that once I had beat the main campaign, I didn't feel like there was much left for me to do in the open world. Whereas when I beat Far Cry 4 the other day, I beat the main story and I was like, damn, I've still got like half a map to explore and actually kind of conquer. And it's not necessarily the biggest problem, but it also led to Far Cry 4's story moments feeling a bit more unique. And whilst Far Cry's story is never the best story writing in the world, they're good enough that you do want to kind of get into them and listen to what's going on and pay attention. So to me, I think that blurring the lines between the open world and the main story is kind of more distracting than it is helpful. So I would like to see a return to a more linear and separated campaign. I want Far Cry 7 to feel really unique in its setting and themes. It's not that all the Far Cry games kind of feel the same, but at times they can be a little repetitive and tedious, especially when it comes to their sort of themes and what they have going for them in the story elements and the map. So, you know, Far Cry 3, you're going against a crazy psycho badass who wants to kill you. Far Cry 4, you're going against a crazy psycho badass who wants to kill you or adopt you to spread ashes. Okay, that one's weird. And then Far Cry 6, you know, same shtick again. The point is, it works, and it's fine, but because these enemies in specific aren't the most unique enemies, they can kind of blur together, whereas when you go and play Far Cry 5, the fact that the theme is just so different to anything you've seen, and the fact that they have a more cultist, we want to free you of your sin vibe, opposed to we just want to kill you, it's a really different ambience for the entire game, and it sets the themes completely apart, and no one is ever going to mistake Far Cry 4 for Far Cry 5, but you can definitely mistake a game like Far Cry 3 for Far Cry 4, and I know that it's not the biggest deal, but I think if we want Far Cry to be unique, Far Cry 7 should really try and push towards having a more separated theme to previous games. Far Cry always has this thing where it's like, you're kind of rebelling against a big enemy faction, and I love it, it's why I play the game. Dismantling them bit by bit is really fun, but in Far Cry 6, this was completely ruined for me by one thing. Literally, one thing killed this entire thing. And that was the fact that when you got into the base game, you could literally walk right to where the enemy factions live and their big capitals and where the big strong forts are, and you could walk right over to it with really no major danger. Now, this was never happened before. In Far Cry 4, they would lock off literally half the map until you were ready to basically take down Pagan Min, which I thought was great, because not only did that give you half a map to explore once you'd beat the main campaign, but on top of that, it added a real sense of like, oh, this guy has got this place locked down. And in Far Cry 5, it's done differently, but I feel like the enemy presence is a lot more there than a game like Far Cry 6, and I felt again like there was a real force against me, but in Far Cry 6, despite having an incredible actor for the villain, I felt, if anything, that there was no real danger. I went straight to the main city where they were going to go, expecting like a big gunfight and tanks and minigun, and like, no, nothing. It was just like, there's a few guards patrolling the streets and a jeep that casually roamed around. And that was really disappointing to me, because it kind of ruined the entire game, to be honest. I make it no secret that I do not like Far Cry 6 for what it is. I don't think it's inherently a bad game, but for me, it does so much wrong that I just physically can't play it at times. But I guess what I'm saying is, the fact that I could just walk over to where the enemy faction lives, and it's supposed to be hiving and the most powerful place, and not have any real danger, ruined the entire campaign. Because it's like, well, what am I fighting against? If I can walk over there, surely this faction of rebels could walk over there and take over it too. And it might sound stupid, but when the danger isn't actually present in the gameplay, then when you play the campaign, you're not going to feel any danger. And you're going to feel like it was all basically for nothing, which, honestly, it kind of felt like it was with Far Cry 6. And that was never an issue with Far Cry 3, 4, or 5, because the danger was very much there, and you couldn't just immediately walk over to the most guarded place in the game and not have any real trouble. Now, you could argue perhaps I had my difficulty set too low, but I think that when it's the, like, final building in the game, it should be hard unless you're ready to approach it in the missions, right? But unfortunately, I just didn't get that, and I know I've been on this point for a while, but I want the danger to be genuinely there in Far Cry 7, because, as I say, that just really ruined Far Cry 6 for me. I want to go back to having a normal protag. I know that this might sound dumb, but in Far Cry 5, you are quite literally just a soulless, generic NPC custom character. Not a bad thing, because the story is so damn good that it can kind of overcome that. So this isn't necessarily a must, but for me, I felt like playing as AJ in 4, and whoever you play as in 3, I've completely forgotten, my brain's gone blank. I know that I had a stronger attachment to those characters than whoever I play as in 5, and whoever I play as in 6. And whilst, I haven't played 3 and 2 and 1 in a very long time, playing 4 recently, it kind of reminded me that, damn, having a main character you can get behind and understand the motives of, that's voiced for 1, which is majorly important, and, it's just kind of there. You feel like he's there for the story, and you can get attached to him. It's cool. I think it's nice to have a character you can root for, and having just a customizable character, whilst it may net you some more money, I don't think it really does anything for the storytelling of the game. I want to see them really invest in the arcade map editor stuff for the game too. In Far Cry 5, it was, quite frankly, the best we've ever seen it. It was honestly the only time I felt like I could genuinely make whatever I wanted to in a game. It was really cool, really well done, and I made some really cool levels messing around with it. And I remember it being really good in 4, and I remember it being really good in 3 with the map editor, and I love it, basically, is what I'm saying. At least in my ideal Far Cry 7, I want to see it there, for sure. To give Far Cry 6, though, a little bit of credit, it had some really cool companions and pets and stuff. I mean, I can't think of any other game where I had a pet crocodile who went around attacking people. So, I definitely want to see stuff like that come back in Far Cry 7. I think that could be really cool. I really want to see them invest more in the whole skills thing again. In Far Cry 3 and 4, the main way of your character progression was the skills. Without those skills, you were basically useless. Whereas for 5 and 6, I just don't think that was the case. So for me, I really want the skills to come back, because I think it did add quite a lot to the progression, and it let you sink more time into building and working up your character, versus just playing as a character that's kind of fine to begin with. Here may be a hot take, so I hope this one's not too bad for you guys. I don't want them to keep doing these crossovers with TV shows and films and stuff. So obviously in Far Cry 6, you had stuff like La Casa de Papel crossovers and Stranger Things crossovers, and it's cool, don't get me wrong, but like, to a certain degree, we're not being a bit ridiculous here. Like, I want to play Far Cry for Far Cry, not Far Cry for, well, Stranger Things and stuff. And I admit, I've never really spent much time on these things anyway, because I think they're pretty just cringy, to be honest. But I don't mind it in a sense of, like, cosmetic outfits, if that makes sense, that's fine. But, like, actual missions with gameplay was always really lame. This was something that happened in Ghost Recon Wildlands, actually. You went against, I can't remember, yeah, you went against Predator, I think, in, like, the woods, and the mission was really hard. That's the only reason I remember it. It was, like, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But it was also just a bit, like, it removes a lot of the serious nature from the game, and I don't know, maybe that's me just being a bit boring. That could be the case here. Well, I want Far Cry to feel like Far Cry and stick to its own sort of themes. Keep all the weird and wacky stuff for either additional DLC, or keep it in some sort of level editor / arcade. I really want guns to be improved too. Throughout Far Cry as a whole, I always felt like the guns were just kind of really middle of the road and standard. At least for Far Cry 3, 4, and 5, I'll admit again, I haven't sunk enough time into 6 to really comment on it. I really should replay 6, but God, I just dread it. But I feel like throughout those games, yeah, there were some cool guns, don't get me wrong, but they always just felt kind of similar and just generic and kind of just like your standard guns. You had like a standard AR that you could put a scope on, you could put extended mag, or you could put a suppressor on, and that's kind of it. And again, I don't know how it is in 6, but I hope that 7 can expand upon it and give us some really cool and unique things. And I also hope that the gunplay can feel really good, kind of like Far Cry 6 actually does. One thing I do remember commenting on being a lot better was how the guns felt to shoot and kind of use. One thing I really want to come back is a heavier emphasis on hunting. In Far Cry 3 and 4, if you don't hunt, you will not get a lot of really cool things, and the game can be kind of just boring for you because you can't carry as many guns as you'd like, you can't carry as much ammo as you'd like, you can't even carry as many syringes and stuff as you'd like. And to me, I really like that. I thought that the fact the game makes me kind of go my way and interact with the wildlife and the nature it puts into the game was really cool. That was one thing I really missed with Far Cry 5, which was just like, pretty much the only time I hunted was when I needed to sell stuff. And that was just really lame because it just took away from everything I loved about Far Cry 3 and 4 in that sense. So for me, I definitely want them to really return to the hunting sort of roots of Far Cry, because, as I say, I think it was another way of forcing the player to kind of interact with the world, and also allowed Ubisoft to show off how much sort of detail they put into the environments and the animals and stuff. And again, in Far Cry 5, I feel like that was completely missing. Now, in this video, I wasn't going to discuss any like leaks and rumors, but there is one thing that was rumored that I do want to comment on briefly, because it was something I didn't like the sound of. So there is a rumor floating around that apparently Far Cry 7 is going to have some sort of time-based gameplay. No, I'm sorry, this is just my take again, but time-based gameplay, which is basically to say that the game is going to have a time limit before you can complete it and win. That sort of stuff does not work for me. If you give me a big expansive open world and then go, okay, you have an allotted amount of fun time before things get real and you can't explore anymore, that just sounds lame. Now, I can understand having like time limits in missions and stuff, and don't get me wrong, if you give me 5 minutes to complete a mission, or I fail and it drastically changes the outcome of the story, that's fine. That's actually cool, and that adds the same thrill as having a time limit to the entire game anyway. But having a time limit for me to explore the map and save, I think what it was, your family was in the rumor, that's kind of lame. I don't like it when I'm handed such a big and fun sandbox and then I still feel restricted, and that's what will happen with a time limit. The most recent game I can compare this to that I know of is actually Modern Warfare 3, the new one. They had a zombies mode that I personally didn't actually mind that much. I thought it was okay at best. But it was, you know, something I would have kind of grinded away at, because I do just like shooting zombies, put some music on, good times. But then they had like a 60-minute time limit before you had to leave the lobby, and I was just like, well, I'm not going to do this. I can play for, what, an hour before I'm forced to have to restart from nothing? And that sort of stuff really bugs me, and that's something I don't want, especially in a Far Cry game that's got such a really enriched and full of life sort of world that I want to take the time to appreciate. Okay, back onto more positives though, and this is something I'm pretty excited for. I'm looking forward to seeing those landscapes. Now, Far Cry, man, they have this way, to be fair to them. Ubisoft, I'm going to give you a little praise here, only a little bit, you don't deserve much, but they have a way of just crafting worlds that look really good at certain moments. And it's something I've always credited them for. Even with games that I don't particularly like, I can be like, damn, I don't like this game, but you've done a really good job of making this world. It looks really pretty. A personal example here is Watch Dogs Legion. That's a game I don't like for the most part, but I will admit that the world looks pretty damn good at times, and you know, you gotta give them credit, like, damn, this is a pretty nice setting. And again, Far Cry 6 is the same thing. It's a game I don't particularly like at times, but I will give them credit because it looks very, very good, and that's something I really look forward to seeing in the new one. I would really love for them to commit to different playstyles this time around. One thing that's always been a bit of a nitpick with me is there's two ways to play Far Cry. You can either go stealthy, or you can just completely go balls to the wall action. And those work fine for the most part, but I never feel like either is really that fleshed out. Yeah, combat's kind of fun, but being stealthy, it works, but at times you're kind of feeling limited, whether it be janky AI spotting you and you feel like it shouldn't, whether it be kind of the fact that hiding bodies is just such a chore, etc, etc. My point is, though, that neither way feels fully fleshed out, and I would also like some other ways to play too. Whether that be, like, for example, in Far Cry 4, you can call the guns for hire and have an entire team squadron come and back you up in a gunfight. Stuff like that, to me, was really cool, and I want to see stuff like that return. But I would like for them to just kind of flesh out the whole combat system in general. I want stealth to feel like it's a lot more stealthy, I guess. I don't know how to really word that. I want more stealth mechanics that are really effective, and, you know, I feel like in Far Cry 3, the stealth was kind of better than it was in the other games, but that also could just be nostalgia. But I never felt like stealth was really too critical in the later games. And I know even when playing 4 recently, the AI would really annoy me at times, whether it be stuff like a dog spotting me for a split second and barking, and that alerting an entire fortress, which would get me annoyed. Or whether it would just be an enemy spotting me in a way I think is a little ridiculous. Stuff like that obviously is older Far Cry issues, and I'm sure that the new ones don't have as many, especially in 6, but I do just request that the stealth gets fully fleshed out, and, you know, they have some cool design, because one thing I'll give them credit for is in Far Cry 4, when you go to attack some outposts, there's some really cool ways you can get in there, whether it be hooking up to a nearby mountain to get an overarching view, or on one that I remember, there was a little tunnel that you could go underneath the outpost and attack from the inside out. Stuff like that to me is really cool, and the way they designed the level actually works perfect for it. So I would definitely like for something like that to return in Far Cry 7. I hope they, in the next game, kind of mix up the mission structure a little too. I love Far Cry missions for what they are, But every single Far Cry game, and maybe even every single Ubisoft game, let's be honest, has a weird trippy level where you're in a dream sequence. It has a weird trippy level where you're high. It has a level which, for some reason, you have to go and burn things with a flamethrower. Like, every single one of them does this same shtick. And it's not that it's bad. I actually quite like a lot of these things. But I do think some more weird and wonderful missions would actually greatly benefit the franchise at this point, because I feel like when I play a Far Cry game, I know exactly what mission types I'm going to be getting. And again, it's not that the mission types are bad, but it is that I feel like I have played a lot of them before. Anyways though, this video is getting long, so I'm going to leave it there. Drop down below what your biggest request for a new Far Cry game is. I know that this video is structured very weirdly with some major things and some weird little things, but I wanted to basically just cover whatever came to mind about a new Far Cry game for a bit of good old fun. If you want to see more about Far Cry, I will make a plan to cover it going into the future. I'm trying to expand my gaming tastes currently on the channel and talk about things that aren't just dead franchises. So if you're looking forward to new games in general, or new Ubisoft games, or more importantly new Far Cry's, then stick around. I'd appreciate you. But anyways guys, I'll see you in the next one. Take care and peace. Oh my god, let me go. Oh my god, stop. Stop. Let me up. Oh my god, I'm gonna get bald. Stop, let me up. Let me. Oh.